used. I so submit I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill.
Mr. Brave Chen. Thank you, Deputy President. I thank the officials here today as well. I want to speak on speeding up the development of smart governance, greater support for community caring network, and also new productive forces and high-quality development. I support the Appropriation Bill. We're still feeling the impact of COVID, even though COVID is now behind us. Wars are raging, economic recovery is weak, geopolitics remains complicated, conflicts are ongoing. Economies elsewhere are facing huge risks. We are an externally oriented city. We cannot expect to sit pretty. Even with these challenges, the budget this year shows great foresight. The budget adapts to the times and proposes relevant measures. With a cyclical deficit, the budget lays down a long-term plan for our development and leverages our advantage of having our country supporting global connectivity as we pursue new productive forces to achieve high-quality development. We spend where warranted, but we also need to achieve greater, faster, better, and more economical results. We need to boost revenue and gradually balance the books. That's what we can all agree on. This budget is pragmatic. As Director Xia Baolong said, as we go from stability to prosperity, we need innovation. We cannot approach new circumstances with old perspectives. We cannot solve new problems with old thinking. We need new approaches, new solutions. We need to overcome ourselves. We need to be bold in innovation so that we can achieve transformation and upgrading of the economy. The Financial Secretary announced the Digital Policy Office. We support this. There will be a commissioner for digital policy tasked with pursuing work on a smart city. We support this direction, but here it is. We commend good work, but we do see rookie mistakes with cyber systems. Here, on developing a smart city and smart governance, the government needs to reassure people. Last year, the district council election was mostly a success, but towards the last stage, the electronic poll register broke down. One reason was that the designer failed to fully anticipate the traffic, so that the system was overloaded at the last minute. The officials told us they would do better in testing beforehand. Over so many years, the Immigration Department can handle more than 1 million people crossing the boundary every year. This means that system is tried and tested. The Immigration Department is professional. We do have departments with systems that are resilient. When you just hire a new team of IT people to set up a system every time, that is not a great idea. You don't have to take such a fragmented approach. Instead, you need a centralized approach. At the LCSD or the HKEAA, we saw with the Smart Play, Hong Kong e-toll, and I-invigilation, we saw rookie mistakes with those systems. Those are avoidable. We avoid those mistakes, and only then we can ensure quality governance. We can do internal recruitment. Hiring contractors comes with risks. We need quality in the work we do in INT. We need to get the professionals involved, and then we can achieve results in line with the chief executive's approach. Professor Sun Dong also said that for major systems with implications for the public, those systems will be under the OGCIO. The office will keep an eye on the entire workflow that will give us greater assurance. Last year, the HYAB and the HAD followed the manifesto of the chief executive. Care teams have been set up. We all welcome this. Care team members are volunteers. They put in the work. These teams support the work of departments. We have built up community networks. I also thank government departments such as the LWB and other departments, Security Bureau. Those bureaus and departments used those care teams. So can we go even more professional with those teams and networks to achieve better results? People in need can access better and faster services from care teams. Those care teams delivered on people's priorities. We had a super typhoon and then we had a fire in Jordan. On those days, the care teams came into action. They helped the people in need to address those hazards. Those teams have become a powerful force to support the government. On care teams, there are volunteers, dedicated people. They put in the time and resources. We are grateful to their service. But we also hope the government can provide more resources, land, and money. I thank the HYAB and the LWB for the support. We need resources to achieve better services. The Home Affairs Department staff also worked overtime to support the work. But when you have too much paperwork, the volunteers struggle with the work. Those care teams serve over 20,000 people. Then it's for each team. We now have larger districts. For each team, there is $40,000 to $50,000. So, and the amount that reaches each person is much smaller, $3 per head. The government needs to provide greater recurrent support. Let's look at the example of the CAS and auxiliary medical auxiliary service. We need more resources so that those care teams can provide better services. And then these teams can be better focused on serving the public, and then we will see better results. Some volunteers said, the care teams care about the people. And these care teams need greater support to keep doing their work. Now on culture, sports, and tourism, our mega events have drawn many visitors. In the May, there will be events. This year will mark the 75th anniversary of the founding of the PRC. This will be a joyous occasion. There's a lineup of events. We have also passed the SNSO. We can now focus on the economy. We're going from stability to prosperity, and we all need to work together. And we need to raise national identity and awareness. The DAB proposed 31 proposals at the two sessions, mostly about the people's lives, patriotic education, telling good stories of Hong Kong. The government bought the broadcasting rights of the Paris Olympic Games. That's good. This is good for people and good for the economy, and we will also see the national games next year. President Xi Jinping said that red tourism is worth exploring. Hong Kong is part of our country's anti-invasion effort. We can scale up red tourism attractions. We support the Appropriation Bill. We need to work on smart governance. We need to provide greater support for community caring networks so that we can achieve greater development. Professor Priscilla Leung. I support the 2024-25 budget. This is a meaningful debate because we have finally completed the legislation for Basic Law Article 23. We're truly going from stability to prosperity. With national security ensured, there are major challenges. First, the fiscal deficit. In 2023 to 24, the fiscal deficit is more than $100 billion. We have just $730 billion in reserves. We won't be able to see a surplus until 2028 to 29. Second, geopolitical challenges. Cold War mindset in the US and the rest of the West. Groundless accusations and containment. Our economy will suffer because of that. 3. Economic cycles. It's a global issue. Investors wait and see. That's understandable. We cannot make bricks without straw. The FS is in a tough position. It's a good budget. Now, there's a major change confronting the world. So is our country. As Director Xiao Baolong said, we need to adapt to the new circumstances. Our country's leaders expect us to leverage one country, two systems, leverage capitalism and market forces. We need to develop into a quality capitalist society. We need to be where our predecessors haven't been to. Say what our predecessors dared not say. That's the challenge. And the people will judge our performance. With public finance, we need to raise revenue, cut expenses, and also stick to fiscal discipline. Basic Law Article 107 and 108, we need to spend within our means and stick to a low tax system. The mega event economy is all the talk. People say we need to develop tourism. We need to get those 2 points right. But economic transformation will take more than those 2 areas. We need to restructure the economy, restructure industries. We also need the people and the capital to keep up. With quantity, you see changes in quality. Now let's look at HAIC. It has $62 billion under management. Let's look at Temasek. More than 300 billion Singaporean dollars. Our money is way smaller in amount than in Singapore. I support an orderly approach to bond issuance, especially for infrastructure. Quality bond issuance is what I support so that people can share in the results. Hong Kong will see major infrastructure projects such as the Northern Metropolis. I support that project. I also support the proposal of issuing $95 to $130 billion in bonds every year. The government will also issue infrastructure bonds, including sustainable and green bonds, and in total the limit will be $500 billion. That's viable. Now I turn to talent. There is a brain drain. The population is shrinking, and the population is aging. Mr. Chris Sun told us, under the Top Talent Power Scheme, roughly 108,000 people have arrived in Hong Kong under that scheme. We need to keep those people so that they put down roots here. Shenzhen has a scheme for top-tier talent to start businesses there. I welcome the FS for being responsive in dropping the property cooling measures. People overseas told me they were more willing to come here after those cooling measures were dropped. So dropping those measures was the right way to go. Now, population aging. In 2034, 35% of our people will be more than over 65 years old. What do we do about their everyday needs? We need to get more of those people to work. In the US, there is no retirement age. So what do we do in Hong Kong? Professor Sun Dong has a great idea. $100 million for those aged over 65 to learn about AI. At university, there are elderly classes. So it's like a time bank in Europe. Those seniors can work for a certain number of hours and then they get services in return. We need to do something for the property-owning middle class. If these people no longer have money, they cannot take out their own medical insurance and they need to be covered by the public healthcare system. I know someone in their 70s still working as a secretary. These people rely on themselves, but they also need support. Now, on attracting talent, investing in the future is an ongoing effort. Lawyers used to focus on just real estate. This budget proposes investments in many areas. In Hong Kong, $2 billion, the Hong Kong Microelectronics Research and Development Institute, among other initiatives. We have 5 universities in the world's top 100. Most important of all are the research industry and sector. We had Professor Charles Kao and Mr. Frank Wang, but we could not keep those people in Hong Kong. So how do we turn those intellectual property into marketable products? I visited a green power generation project. Those academicians realized something. In Hong Kong, to apply for the money, it takes a lot of paperwork. But in Beijing, as long as it's a great technology, the money goes through quickly within a year. Shenzhen is even more aggressive in attracting talent. Millions of RMB for tech firms to go there. Vice Premier Ding Xuexiang also told us time and again, Hong Kong's value lies in one country, two systems. We cannot become just another mainland city. We need to stay international. Now I turn to International Education Hub. I support the $1 billion Belt and Road Scholarship. This is an investment. Some people badmouth us. Visa students from Belt and Road countries in Hong Kong are impressed by Hong Kong. One country, two systems is new to them. When these visa students go back, they can tell good stories of Hong Kong in their home countries. That's how we can create bond between people. It takes more than just local legislators. When these visitors go back and tell good stories about us, they are more convincing. Outside talent have told me they will stick to one country, two systems, but they want room for scientific research. We will see the IOMED's headquarters in Hong Kong. We will be a dispute resolution center. But most important is talent. As I said, intellectual property matters. We are short of that sort of talent. We don't have enough IP lawyers. Lawyers need to know not just the law. We need to promote double degrees at law. Say going green. What do we do about waste? New energy power generation. The government is conservative in some areas. This is about containing expenses. It was about the rebars being cut short. We were promised arbitration to recover the money. The two power companies will have their power agreements up to 2033. We see power supply issues. Are there break clauses for those companies to pay us? We enter into contracts where we are taken advantage of. Look at Kai Tech. It's a 10-year contract. Some of those clauses don't work for Hong Kong's prime sites. the government needs to look at the contract with the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal. Or we can have KPIs for departments to cut their expenses. Innovation, going aggressive, that's a way to go. I support the appropriation bill.
Reverend Peter Kuhn, President. Now, we face fiscal deficit of over $100 billion, but the budget has not substantially reduced spending on people's livelihood and welfare. It's still providing support and there are relief measures for the public. But then for the middle class and the sandwich class, spending such as rates or salaries, tax concession, well, the sum is reduced, but it's better than nothing. I think for the various sweetening measures or relief or concessions, they are of a much smaller scale. So the FS is still trying to give something to everybody, but it's not as much, but it's better than nothing. But I think the public do appreciate the reasons for that. As for the structural fiscal deficit issue, we need to consider that with care. The government needs to actively resolve the matter of spending exceeding revenue. Now, in the past few years, we've seen continuous increase of recurrent spending. In the budget this year, there is this measure of consolidation program in reducing recurring expenditure. One of the more controversial scheme is the $2 fare scheme and the public transport subsidy scheme. The two schemes have seen increase in spending multiple folds the past few years. Now, for the public transport subsidy scheme, there is increase in costs because of the increase in fares of public transport. Of course, therefore, the year will have to give more subsidy each year with fare increases. So the best way is to control the range of increase of fares. Now, for the railway system, it is the backbone of public transport here. The MTRCL monopolizes the development of railway services. So it shoulders a heavy public responsibility. So it should plow back what it gains from the community so as to foster social harmony. As the government reviews the policy, it should consider a mechanism for market redistribution. For example, when the government considers fare increase applications or new contracts, there should be clause. So part of the subsidy could be used for welfare purposes, and that will allow us to better redistribute social resources. As for the $2 fare scheme, those who benefit are the elderly and persons with disability, mostly the elderly. There is no cap on the subsidy. That means the more you take public transport, the more you benefit. And then bus operators and the MTRCL will just gain from the scheme, and then taxpayers have to take up the tab. Now, there are various suggestions made recently in the community to enhance the scheme. The government should consider them. For example, should there be a cap on the total subsidy each month, and there could be a limit too on the number of long-haul journeys. But actually, for most elderly persons, they use the scheme properly. They shouldn't be criticized as abusing the scheme. Now, to reduce the subsidy amount, the government could consider fare scheme by distance. So if the elderly takes routes paying higher sectional fares for short journey, the operator should only charge the difference in the fare. And as for the government could also consider perhaps during peak hours, there could be more than $2 of concession. And then during peak hours when people go to work or school, then there could only be half of price concession. So that means there will be concessions at different times, and this is to encourage the elderly to only take public transport during non-peak hours. That will help to disperse the traveling crowd. At the same time, that means public transport could be put to better use during off-peak hours. Now, there is no cap on spending on the schemes, so I hope the government will really keep improving the two schemes. And also, most importantly, it should review the sustainability of the two schemes, because we don't want there to be a major burden on public finances. For social welfare, the government stresses that it won't reduce funding for CSSA and other assistance, but then there will be restrictions on the growth of such services at least. Now, the government is not cutting subvention for all NGOs, but just only the larger NGOs. That's better than reduction across the board. But still, there are limited resources. Now we see an aging population. There is not enough supply of welfare services to meet the demand. We have seen many tragedies in recent years. There are elderly taking care of the elderly, or taking care of persons with disabilities, and mental health is also an issue of concern to us. So with an aging population, there is need to strengthen services in this area. For large NGOs, yes, they may have more financial capacity, but still some NGOs may have to cut wages or reduce the staff size, and we're worried that may affect the quality of services to the public. I must ask the government to give an undertaking. Now, when the fiscal position improves, the government must give the reduced amounts back to the NGOs. Now, the government wants the public to work with the government in this difficult time, and the government should take a multi-pronged approach. They mustn't think the government's being stringent with them, but not with the public, but not with the government itself. The government spends close to $150 billion in civil service pay. That accounts for about 20% of government expenditure. And we're seeing an increase in the establishment size and supernumerary posts. And the supernumerary posts are extended all the time. By the end of March 2025, there will be 194,000 civil service posts. That means an increase of 20,000 posts compared to now. In 2003, during SARS and the 2009 financial turmoil, the government froze civil service pay or even reduced their pay. Now we can't see when there will be economic recovery and the government suffering fiscal deficit. So if the government could cut subvention for welfare organizations in a flexible manner, I believe if we reduce the civil service establishment or cut civil service pay, I think it's achievable too. If the government could be more precise with this manpower needs and maintain a reasonable civil service establishment, then we can cut expenditure substantially. But then the government keeps saying that if we adjust the civil service establishment, that will deal a blow to civil service morale. But then the people are already suffering, they're struggling, so aren't their morale also at a low level now? I think everyone in the community should work together to tide over this difficult time. I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill. Mr. Kingsley Wong. Thank you, President. I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill 2024. It's really tough for the FS to work on this budget. It needs to reduce fiscal deficit, but at the same time, he needs to promote economic development. So the government is able to cut expenditure and generate more revenue. Now, for example, the two-tiered salaries tax. So for those earning more than $5 million, that's additional 1% of salary. So in a civil service, actually only the CE will have to pay an extra $5,000 tax. As for rates, there will also be higher rates for property with assessable value of over $5 million. So again, it's like a two-tier system. And then there is Halfman. At the same time, the government is able to pay CSSC recipients an additional half months of allowance, and then for carers of the elderly or person with disability, an additional $500 of allowance. Is not much, but we commend the approach. Now, we want to focus on high quality development. It's because we want the public to have to enjoy better livelihood. We are moving from stability to prosperity, and a committed government needs to work with an effective market. So there has to be high quality employment to promote high quality development. As Director Xia Balong said, talents and manpower are our first and foremost resources. We need to nurture more talents that could meet the needs of the development of the 8 centers. We need more local talents of high quality. We must insist on local workers first. This will allow upward mobility for young people, and then there will be reasonable increase in wages for the working population. Now, the Top Talents Pass scheme has brought in many high-end talents to Hong Kong. But then for some other talent schemes, there are people with a monthly wage of less than $20,000. So that's not in line with our idea of talent. So we are afraid that these talent schemes have been abused for bringing in cheap labor. And the construction association found in a survey that 70% of the barbenders are not underemployed, or they may not even have work. So, and the associations received a request for assistance from over 700 barbenders. And then for other lowly paid jobs, now there is a relaxation of labor importation, say for waiters and so on. And some 22,000 people have been imported in the past 6 months, but then their wage is only $5,000 to $9,000 a month. So the government must review the labor importation scheme and talent schemes to make sure that local workers are not deprived their job opportunities and that the wages are not suppressed. Now, we want everyone to prosper together. This is the national policy. So in 2023, GDP's gone up by 5.2%. That's in our country. And then disposable income has grown by 6.1%. In Hong Kong, 2023, there are still 628,000 people earning less than $55 per hour. They account for about 1/5 of the working population. So that means even if you work harder, you don't earn more. So that is the real reason of working poverty. Now, what the country is doing serves as a demonstration for Hong Kong. We want people in Hong Kong to have a higher standard of living. So for minimum wage policies or labor importation policies, they must always first highlight the importance of local workers and that they're able to be reasonably rewarded for their effort. Now, for those earning more than $10,170 per month, that is an hourly wage of $52. These people are no longer eligible for the old age living allowance, so they would rather therefore just take up casual work, or not work altogether, and then they have to reduce their working hours. So the government needs to work together with the private sector in resolving conflicts between welfare policies and unleashing potential workforce. Now, the government took the lead in reviewing the outsourcing system. So for outsourced workers, they now enjoy reasonable pay and they're able to share in the prosperity of the community. Now, that's actually the demand in a motion debate. And then President Xi Jinping said in the July 1st speech that the SL government needs to show more resolve and courage in making changes So I hope in the budget there will be in future there will be a proposal to further improve the outsourcing system. The financial secretary committed that in government bonds issued, a certain percentage will be for investment in MPF. This is to make sure there will be a steady return from MPF. That was announced a year ago, but after a year, we're still not seeing any such products in the market. So I asked the FS to announce as soon as possible the progress of this initiative. And then the administration fees not adjusted for 10 years, and that affects the benefits of the working population. So there must be no longer delay in reviewing that. Now, there's need for us to better integrate into the national development, and there has to be better connectivity between Hong Kong and the mainland on various fronts. There's need to improve the regulatory regimes and so on. Now, on health spending, is over $100 billion this year. Every year, the spending is increased, but still, we know that people are not able to go to public hospitals or even private hospitals. There's a long waiting list. Now, I see the health bill is working hard and we are seeing some progress. For example, for elderly healthcare voucher, there is now a GBA pilot scheme, and the vouchers also cover dental services. As for cross-boundary ambulance service, that will be introduced soon. In the GBA development framework, there must be complementary measures among GBA cities. So we need to think out of the box, and we need to make good use of GBA resources. Patients will benefit, the government will save money, and everybody benefits. Now, for example, for public service here, health service here, the cost per head is $1,500, but for the Hong Kong U Shenzhen Hospital, the cost is just $400 to $500. So there should be a high amount for health care voucher, and then people, especially in GPA, it will help to substantially reduce healthcare spending for the government. And the voluntary health insurance scheme now, elderly healthcare vouchers can now be used to pay for insurance premium in the mainland. Now, Macau has already extended the use of the healthcare voucher for insurance premiums in the 9 mainland cities. But whichever way we do it, whether it's by voucher or by direct subsidy, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that we're able to do so as soon as possible. So we should align our benefits set of the Macau, because we want to promote further integration across the boundary for everybody to benefit. Thank you.
Dr. Junius Ho, President. On the 28th of February, in the press conference, I mentioned that the 2024-25 budget is not satisfactory. The expenditure, as well as the revenue of the government, is some $600 billion and $700 billion respectively. So we have 48 some billion dollars of fiscal deficit. Compared to last year, the expenditure and revenue of the government is some $700 billion and $800 billion. And there was a deficit of some $90 billion. So in total, we're seeing $101.6 billion of deficit. So this has exceeded our expectation. This year, by the consolidated fiscal deficit Well, I have a bad feeling. That is, I think the deficit will be higher than $48.1 billion. The FS mentioned that by 2026 we will see a surplus, but I'm looking at today and the situation last year. I think it is more reliable for us to look at the previous figure and the current figures. Why are we seeing such a huge expenditure? Well, this is due to the COVID pandemic, geopolitical tensions, and different factors. Well, the whole world has been facing the same challenges. How can we do better? We have to rely on the financial secretary. He has to ride the storm with us, and he has to achieve some results. There are some long-standing issues that we've been facing in the areas of education, healthcare, and social welfare. I've been talking about these issues over the past few years. They account for over 50% of our total expenditure. Last year, I talked about this expenditure on civil servants. Reverend Peter Kuhn, as well as some other members, have already talked about it, including Professor Priscilla Leung as well, and Mr. Tony Che. They all talked about it. Mr. Rock Chan as well. His speech was very convincing and compelling. How can we reduce expenditure on the civil service? This year, we're seeing $150 billion of expenditure on civil service. This includes the pension, as well as salary for civil servants, as well as housing benefits, medical benefits for civil servants, as well as education. I'm talking about education subsidy for civil servants' children. In total, we're seeing $150 billion of expenditure on civil service. Should we tighten our purse strings? We are seeing a drop of our reserve from some $900 billion to $700 billion. We don't have the guts to deal with the three major long-standing issues, and we're seeing a fourth long-standing issue now. What should we do? In this budget, I don't see any hope. Among the 194,000 civil servants, well, this is 20,000 civil servants more compared with the normal establishment. And this is excluding the 8,000 to 9,000 teachers working in publicly funded schools. How about the establishment within the hospital authority and that under the airport authority? Well, these are all costs. President, we need to have the courage to make commitments. We are facing extraordinary times, so we have to deal with all these through extraordinary means. You can't please everyone. I respect Dr. Lo Wai Kwok because he has his perspectives. Well, Dr. Lo mentioned that the financial secretary is like a cook or a master chef. We have to use our resources or spend the money within our means. I think that all along we have been rich. We had a lot of fiscal reserve, but now we only have $100 billion in our fiscal reserve. Professor Priscilla Leung said civil servants should see a 10% drop in terms of the establishment. There are many supernumerary posts, but very often civil servants or these supernumerary staff become permanent civil servants in the end after staying in the position for some 10 years. Have we been facing up this issue squarely? In Shenzhen, they have 20 million people with 48,000 civil servants. In Hong Kong, we are importing talents through the Top Talent Pass scheme, but we aren't seeing a drop in the number of civil servants. Instead, we're seeing an increase in civil service establishment. We see staff from FEHD, one holding a camera on the street, another holding a broom, and the other one holding a water hose as they clean the street. Well, we need so many staff cleaning the streets? Like Mr. Stanley Ho, the deceased real estate property giant, said, well, there are many people without jobs in Hong Kong, but we are seeing the same number of civil servants in the government. We aren't saving cost in this regard. Should we keep borrowing money to sustain our lives? Are we going to see a structural deficit? I think we have seen the alarm bell being set off. This year, we're going to issue bonds worth of $120 billion. What about the coming few years? Our fiscal reserve will drop to $600 to $700 billion. I have an advice for the SAR government. We need to repay our debt. We should not arbitrarily borrow money from others. The Financial Secretary and the Deputy Financial Secretary may be very busy today. It's now 4:54 p.m. and they still haven't shown up in the council meeting. Well, we are working on the second reading debate of the Appropriation Bill, and they aren't here. I can tell you clearly that I do not give my support to the Appropriation Bill. Thank you. Mr. Perry, President, in this year's budget, I see that the government is attaching great importance to the tourism industry in Hong Kong. Even with fiscal deficit, the government is earmarking funding for the tourism industry. Over the past year, with the concerted efforts of various sectors and the government, by Q1 this year, we're seeing the number of inbound tourists has got to 72% of the 2018 level. We are trying to revive the industry gradually, and yet we are still seeing challenges to meet the new demands for tourists. I'd like to talk about the hotel and accommodation tax, as well as transformation of industry and so on, to tell you the challenges that the tourism industry has been facing. On the hotel accommodation tax, the tourism industry is trying to get more tourists to come to Hong Kong. Starting from the 1st of January next year, the government is going to levy hotel accommodation tax again. This will reduce our competitiveness, and also this runs counter to our objective to attracting more overnight tourists. With the plastic-free scheme, as well as the MSW charging scheme, as well as the 418 continuous contract requirement, the hotel accommodation tax is going to just add burden to the sector. I hope the government can really listen to the views of the hotel industry as well as the tourism industry to reconsider its decision to collect HAT. Now on aviation industry, according to a survey, 70% of the travel agency has only resumed their capacity or businesses by 50% of pre-pandemic levels. The revenue they make is $4.8 million this year, and the businesses they see is only 63% compared to 2018. We are yet to see a full resumption of air capacity. We're only seeing a 75% recovery rate, and it is only until the end of this year that we'll see a full recovery. Aviation is crucial to the revival of the tourism industry. Travel agencies have been on the weak side. After COVID pandemic, we're seeing a decentralization trend. People aren't relying so much on travel agencies nowadays. Therefore, the government should roll out effective measures to encourage airline companies to resume air capacity and open up new flight routes to boost the revival of the tourism industry. Also, I mentioned my views on fees for tourists. Many members of the industry mentioned that the fees charged by the airport, as well as airliners, as well as the fees incurred in the 3-runway system, are obstacles for us. I hope the government can review the different types of fees that it charges the tourists. Third, I always mention the importance of service quality. We are seeing different patterns and different types of behaviors of tourists. We have to roll out new products. We have to integrate culture, tourism, as well as sports. We have to have the 5 types of tourism. In order to do this, we cannot only rely on the market. We need intervention and support from the government. According to research done by the Legislative Council, it shows that different cities in the world are integrating the efforts of different industry to roll out new tourism products, and we should learn from that. We are seeing a local characteristic tour scheme. The 3-year scheme may have to, however, end this year. This is very disappointing for the tourism industry, and it's going to deal a blow to the creation of local tours by the industry. I hope the government can give more support to help the industry transform and roll out new itineraries and products. Many people are concerned how we can make use of our tourism resources. For instance, the M-Mark system as well as the Mega ACE Fund can work with the industry to roll out packages. There are also declared monuments managed by the government, and we can make use of these monuments to roll out new products. The government earmarked $500 million to enhance country parks in Hong Kong. How can we make use of country parks in Hong Kong to build green tourism in Hong Kong? Well, we have to rely on the government to communicate more frequently with the industry. In the government's reply, I'm seeing some good changes. For instance, LCSD before March, it takes the initiative to talk to the industry to see how we can integrate culture and tourism. We are also looking at a new type of ticketing system to roll out new products in the industry. I hope the government can liaise more closely with the sector to launch signature tourism products. Now I'd like to turn to manpower. With 3 years of COVID, we're seeing a manpower crunch and we're seeing a slow recovery compared to other industry. We need support from the government. If we cannot address the manpower shortage, in the end, we will not be able to receive tourists and our industry will suffer. We saw the labor importation scheme for the aviation industry, and the scheme has been rolled out for half a year now. And in the aviation industry, 1,300 people have come to Hong Kong. And for hotel industry, I learned that there hasn't been any imported labor who has arrived for the hotel industry yet. The government needs to listen to the feedback of the relevant industries to review the effectiveness of the labor importation scheme. Now, on technology, which we make use of to transform the industry, we've been talking about making use of big data. However, what is disappointing is that a lot of the arts and culture facilities lack the relevant data. It shows that the government is lagging behind in terms of collecting data. For the mainland source market, for instance, we don't know how many tourists we have from different mainland cities. And this makes it hard for us to ask the central authorities to expand the individual visit scheme to other mainland cities. For outbound visitors numbers, well, we have to rely on other governments to know where Hong Kong people are traveling to. Without big data, we cannot make comprehensive planning on how we make use of resources. In order for the tourism industry to transform itself, we should not just collect data. Currently, the government has a matching fund scheme for the tourism industry, but this is far from adequate in terms of allowing the industry to make use of technology to upgrade and transform itself. In order for the industry to be digitalized, we have to see reform, and we need comprehensive policy and measures in order for us to build a mechanism. We are lagging behind in terms of smart tourism building. We have to catch up. Well, this year is a crucial year for us to build the tourism industry, and it is also a year where we see a development blueprint for the tourism industry. I hope the government can work more closely with the industry sector so that we can revive the industry. Thank you.
Dr. Johnny President, the Financial Secretary had a tough job to do in drawing up the budget this year. The theme this year is Advance with Confidence, Seize Opportunities, Strive for High-Quality Development. Given the deficit, the FS proposed a financial consolidation program to eventually break even and to keep our reserves at a healthy level. We expect that we can balance the books by 2028 to 29. This shows people hope. The FS worked hard. So this budget is really pragmatic and shows commitment. Here are some observations and thoughts. The budgets in recent years focused on economic recovery and high-quality development. After COVID, we did not see the economic recovery we hoped for. The property market and the stock market are in the doldrums. People flock to the mainland for spending. There are people slamming the government for not doing enough to shore up the economy. People are pessimistic about our economic futures. Those claims are wrong. We should not blame the government for every problem. this is a great opportunity for us to reflect on where we have fallen short. Are we not being competitive enough? Are we not being innovative enough? We need to provide new products to meet the market's needs. The Hong Kong people I know are flexible, show and can-do spirit. We have our country's support. As we head into the new era, we need to show a can-do spirit and innovation and better leverage one country, two systems. With a growing fiscal deficit, we need to raise new revenue. As the economy gradually recovers, it's not a great idea to have new taxes. I submitted a proposal to the FS with 4 points and 16 measures. I propose relaxing restrictions, removing red tape to find new growth points so that we can have more income and balance the books. Last month, the two sessions concluded. President Xi Jinping stressed developing new productive forces and building a new industrial system, speeding up the development of new productive forces, and that's part of the government report, AI plus and data. These factors are defining features of our country's new development. We need to keep up with our country's development. We're going from stability to prosperity. The next few years will be a critical stage in focusing on the economy. In the long run, boosting income means we need to promote innovation and technology. Let's support our country's drive in new quality development forces. We need to strengthen our role as the 8 centers under the 14th Five-Year Plan. We need a better regulation system. We need to drive Web3 development. We need to foster integration between the financial sector and technology, real economy and virtual economy, so that Web3 can contribute to our GDP. For cryptocurrencies and over-the-counter trading platforms, we need a regulation mechanism. Let's also look at banks for cryptos and also decentralized distributed ledger technology. Let's also relax our restrictions for more market players to trade, and we can bring together the mainland and overseas traders so that the Web3 market can see robust development. Boosting revenue can take the form of more than just putting up taxes. We can have more items for betting at the Jockey Club. We can cover more sports such as basketball, race car racing, and generate greater income from betting duty. More people are taking part in illegal betting. Let's let the Jockey Club cover more sports in its betting program, and that's where we can generate more income through the betting duty. The HKJC will also become more competitive. Early last year, I suggested an electronic initiative to bring in more firms and talent. It doesn't cost much. You open up the application, we can attract talent and enterprises that will not take up local resources. This can provide benefits to our GDP, and this will work better than putting up taxes. I hope the government can consider this. As we raise revenue, let's also contain expenses. We cannot let expenses balloon. Let's look at internal establishment. When we launch new measures, we cannot keep adding new positions to the establishment. Let's make better use of existing staff. Recently, we have seen a spate of incidents, cyber attacks targeting departments. That shows departments are not prepared enough for cybersecurity threats. This also shows some government workers lack awareness in cybersecurity. They are not making good use of technology. President Xi Jinping stressed again and again the need to strengthen the efficacy of smart governance. We need to enhance the digital literacy of government workers. We need new procedures. This can mean lower expenses on staffing, and this can also enhance departments' capability in decision-making and policy-making. Now, on improving people's lives, the budget proposed dropping all property cooling measures. Home prices have fallen for a long time. There were calls for dropping those cooling measures. That's why I also suggested dropping those measures. The FS adopted this idea, and this was a pragmatic move. We hope the property market can regain healthy development, and this can reassure investors. The global economy is full of uncertainties. Our property market is still in the doldrums. It will take time before people want to buy properties again. We should also review our property-related policies. Let's look at people's housing needs and then roll out appropriate measures to help young people get on the housing ladder. We can have something like starter homes or other measures for young people, such as loans for first-time home buyers or youth home ownership loans or low-interest loans for young people struggling with their down payment. Let's help them improve their living environment and enhance a sense of gain and happiness in the community so that people have a place to live. Overall, I support the Appropriation Bill 2024. I hope the government can also develop new productive forces to enhance its fiscal resilience. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Ambrose Lam. President, we are a small place and we're confronted with changes unseen in a century. There are new challenges. It will take time for us to adapt to the problems. It takes a good smith to make good tools. So we need to work on ourselves. We need to do the work. We have a duty as lawmakers to point out the issues we see. We also need good policies. We have seen COVID, geopolitical changes. The government had to spend more to fight COVID. We need to ride out the tough times together, and we see $100 billion in deficit. That's understandable. But normal life has been back for more than a year. Our economy is not in a great place yet. The government has little in its toolkit now. President Xi Jinping said this in 2022. He said we need to create stronger impetus for growth. We have the central authorities' support. We need to overcome the entrenched vested interests and unleash the creativity and vitality in Hong Kong. But in the budget this year, I fail to see the government's resolve in pushing through reforms. The budget in recent years focused on growing the pie and generating more tax revenue. I commend the fact that the government is not levying new taxes. But the problem this year is that we see grand plans without substance. Without substance, no amount of talk will be any good. Some years ago, we talked about the 8 centers. We see how that played out. International Financial Center, our stock market is struggling, IPO numbers are falling. Global Shipping Center, our ports are falling behind. We don't have enough pilots as an aviation center. Asia's Legal and Dispute Resolution Services Center, we have a shortage of judges. Courts have a huge backlog. Regional Intellectual Property Trading Center and the International Trading Center. The government has done something, but we have yet to see results. As for International I&T Center and East meets West Center for Cultural Exchange, results have been seen indeed. The budget this year deals extensively on publicity and attracting investments and talent. We have mega events to attract visitors. Indeed, we have to take those measures. The crux of our problem is an urgent need for internal reform. Publicity and attracting talent will not solve our problems. We focus on publicity, on drawing customers. But the chef is not good enough. We don't have new dishes to offer. The service is poor. The prices are high. No amount of publicity will be any good. Let's look at the legal sector. For the last 2 years, I have called on the government to look at the issues in the legal sector. In the budget this year, I repeated the same calls. Long waiting times for trials. The reply I got was the 2019 Blacklight riots. The judiciary has buried its head in the sand for 20 years. Let's look at the CFI criminal cases. 2023, it takes 186 days for you to get to court. The waiting time is long. It's way longer than the waiting the target. By now, we have even given up on the target waiting date. It now takes more than 352 days for you to get to a trial at the CFI. This judiciary said it will continue to monitor the situation. The solution is simple. Hire more judges. Lawyers and the judiciary know the issue. In the establishment, there are 211 judges, but the strength is just 160. I looked at the budget over the past 10 years. Money was set aside to hire judges, but the judiciary did not use the money. We have tens of millions of dollars left each year. The judiciary struggled to hire judges for so long. Since we have the FS here, let's use that money elsewhere. When the judiciary really needs that money for judges, they can come here. Now, training specialist lawyers. We have the role as the aid centers. We need specialist lawyers for each area, such as for green finance, lawyers who need to know the ESG standards in different countries, and people who are familiar with ESG and green finance product. For shipping center and aviation center, we need specialist lawyers well versed in those financing documents. We also need maritime lawyers. But the training schemes do not subsidize those kinds of training programs. We lack enough local talent. How can we become the aid centers? We cannot count on outside talent all the time. Again, I've been making calls about this scheme for 2 years, no result. Delays in legal aid. The LAD promised to get the money through in 6 weeks, so I chased the LAD about what happened in the first half of 2023. How many cases got the result? I'm not saying the number of cases where money went through. The LAD admitted that it's only a year or two after the litigation ended that the payment came through. A lawyer should count himself lucky if they got the money 2 years later. It takes so long for the legal aid to come through for the lawyer to get paid. In that case, lawyers will struggle to help the government with the aid centers. The DOJ's duties do not include implementing ordinances. In 1997, LegCo passed an Amendment Bill allowing lawyers to practice as corporations. 26 years later, that ordinance has yet to take effect. That law can let our lawyers team up and pursue development elsewhere. This can contribute to the Belt and Road Initiative and safeguard their clients' rights. The solution is easy, but the problem remains unresolved. The government is also taking too long with law reforms. Outdated laws are holding the government back and holding the community back. The government needs to remove red tape. Law reform is moving too slowly. There are 2 reasons from what I can see. First, policy bureaus and departments are stuck in the rut. They have no idea which laws apply to their respective areas. Or the procedures end up becoming red tape, tying up the hands of departments. Many laws are holding us back, but the government is oblivious to that. The government needs to look into this for a solution. Each time a legislative amendment is needed, the matter goes to the DOJ. But the DOJ has only that many workers. Last year, the DOJ spent $170 million on brief-out lawyers. And then you had to hire lawyers for studies. Other departments spent a smaller amount on that. This shows the government fails to make good use of its legal talent to boost efficiency. So I suggest that each department should be able to brief out tasks to local lawyers. Those lawyers should be well versed in the areas of that department. The law firms should be able to advise the department right away. We need to look at which laws are holding us back. That work involves briefing out, so the government does not have to hire those lawyers on a long term. This can help us reform our institutions and make us more competitive. This budget is just so-so for me as someone from the legal sector. Too few judges, not enough training for lawyers, legal aid taking too long to come through. If those problems are still there, I will consider voting against the budget next year.
Mr. Michael Lee. Thank you. Now, our pace of economic recovery is not as expected, and then the government has a deficit of over $100 billion. So the focus of this budget is for us to just replenish our strengths, and then we could strive for development. Now, after legislating for Article 23, we should focus on economic development and improving people's livelihood. So I would like to talk about our future plans. First, housing. The Liberal Party must thank the government for finally removing all the property cooling measures. Also, there's the adjustment of the mortgage to loan ratio, as announced by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. So for SMEs who've used their properties for collateral, this will help their cash flow and give them more flexibility, apart from helping home buyers. Now, everyone wants to have their own homes, but then public housing resources are scarce. That's why there's an increasingly long waiting list for public housing. In the next 5 years, there will be 172,000 public housing units in the pipeline, but still the supply still could not meet the increasing the supply still could not meet the increasing demand. That's why the government's taken up our suggestion to target those who abuse public housing resources, is to make sure that resources are given to those with genuine needs. Now, year on year, there's a 90% increase in notice to quit. So it shows the government's effort is working to target those abusing public housing resources. And we asked the government to use technology for a multi-pronged approach. For example, big data could help the government to find out about the exit records of tenants, and also there could be water meters installed for individual units to see whether there's actually no use of water, excessive use of water in a particular unit. And there we could learn from the example of the police's Good Citizens Award, and so there could be real name reporting system. And at the same time, the government needs to review the housing ladder as soon as possible, or home ownership ladder, because now many young people immediately apply for public housing when they are 18. Some young people will just take up a lowly paid job, or some tell their bosses, do not give me any pay rise, please. Or they even ask employers to pay them cash. And some just lie flat and they wouldn't take up any work. It's just to make sure they will remain eligible for public housing. Of course, this is not something any of us here want to see. Now, the Secretary of Housing said that that's not the original intention of the public housing policy. So the government needs to think out of the box. Now, there should be various ways to determine the eligibility criteria. Now, for low income, we need to encourage the low income earners and young people to strive for improvement. So can that be some sort of a scoring system? Or we could include scores for those who make contribution to the community, for example, taking up voluntary service. That means that will encourage the public to serve the community better. On aviation, the passenger volume is just about 7% of the pandemic level. That's because we still have shortfall 30% of manpower in the industry. And when the 3RS system is in place, we need an increase of by 50% in manpower. So the government needs to speed up its vetting of the labor implementation scheme for the aviation sector. And then for the International Aviation Academy, they have courses to train local talents, but then for pilots, the course costs some 800,000 people. That deters many young people. So the government should consider a loan or even subsidy for cadets, and there must be a condition to say that when cadets finish their courses, they have to stay and serve in Hong Kong. This will promote the development of our aviation industry. Now, in the Easter weekend, many people went north, and then for the full year, there's over 72 million departures, 50 million or so departures headed for the mainland. As for visitors to Hong Kong, there's only about 800,000 or so. That means for every one person coming from mainland, 2 persons go from Hong Kong to the mainland. So we can see that spending pattern has changed substantially. In the past, Hong Kong is known for its cheap and good service and products and goods. But then in the past 3 years during the pandemic, the mainland tries to make improvement. So services and products are now cheaper and better than in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has lost out on its edge. That's why the SL government and the tourism board really have to come up with more ways to bring visitors to Hong Kong, as well as to keep Hong Kong people in Hong Kong to spend. Now, Hong Kong is a place where the East meets the West. We have rich tourism resources. We have a world-class natural landscape. We definitely have the advantages to develop various quality tourism products or host mega events. For example, like the Rugby 7 events that was just held is some good example of success. Restaurants and bars have seen their business gone up some 50%. So the government needs to strive for more mega events to be held in Hong Kong. And in the next year or two, the government needs to do good overseas publicity too for mega events to be held in Hong Kong. This will allow overseas visitors to plan their trip to Hong Kong better, and they may stay a few days more here. More importantly, we need to show the world that Hong Kong is vibrant and that we are a capital of mega events. Apart from mega events, the government needs to develop the concert economy too, by waiving venue rentals or by taking an active approach to invite megastars to come to Hong Kong for concerts. It will help to promote the concert economy. There could be any flash events as well. And so fans will then come to Hong Kong if their idols are here. Hong Kong has many traditional industries with an advantage. Now, in the 2 sessions, that's mention of the development of new productive forces that is inspiring to us. Now, new productive forces means innovation. So for conventional industries, there could be transformation and upgrading through the use of AI, big data, and so on. As for new industries or emerging industries, they will be positive interaction between them and traditional industries. What can the SL do to contribute to this development of the country? I would say science and education. Now, that's the latest strategy of the presidency. That is, education, science, and research are the key to future development. Now, in Hong Kong, we have a number of top universities among the top 100, so we have the condition to use science and education to promote development. We can train young people here. Now, we need a large number of professionals. We also need many technicians in different trades. Now, there will be a lot of space in the Northern Metropolis, so the government should step up training for professionals and technical staff. There could also be public-private partnership, or there could be collaboration with the top universities in the mainland, so that we can have international schools that covers kindergarten all the way to university education that will bring more overseas students to Hong Kong. The government could also work with the top 100 enterprises, so students will have training opportunities while they are doing their programs. And that means young people will students will gain experience in actual work, and then for university research outcome, there could be better commercialization. Hong Kong could be a good window to showcase the products and brands of the mainland. Director Xia Baolong said that the time is changing, the mainland is changing, the consumption pattern is changing, the global situation is changing. We need to keep up with the trend, and then we should need to change in a timely manner. I and other members are all ready to talk to the government so we are able to make effort together. After legislating for Article 23, we have the motherland to back us up, and then the Lion Rock spirit remains vibrant here in Hong Kong. So definitely Hong Kong has a bright future. Now, the financial secretary uses this color that shows hope. So I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill 2024. Mr. Michael Tan. Financial Secretary, each year you will come across various tough issues when formulating a budget. This year must be even tougher. We have used up much of our reserve because of the pandemic, and so you need to watch our spending. And I see why it's challenging for you. Now, there's a tycoon that said that now is the time for us to not to go for large-scale development. We must not be aggressive, but rather we need to hold on to what we have first. The tycoon said it's better to miss out on opportunity than to lose the business altogether. I think that's the direction the budget goes this year, and I will support that. But then it's not the case that government is putting resources to good use in every aspect, and it's not making savings too as it should. So what do you mean by we need to spend where spending is due? Here, I think it's about the waste charging scheme. There are many complaining about not enough types of plastic bags. Some say the shapes are not good enough, and some say that the plastic bags are good and durable. So every day someone says something else. And if we keep, we could see another delay. If we are not going to implement the scheme on the 1st of August, that means we'll be delaying the scheme further again. It won't do good for the government's credibility. Now, we have suggested government to give out free bags for 3 months that will allow the public to adapt to the scheme. But now in the trial project, we see there are new issues coming up every day. So maybe instead of 3 months, you should give out free bags for a year. That means the adjustment period will be for a year. And if shops are caught not complying with rule, you shouldn't fine them or send shop owners to prison, but rather you should give warning. So that means you keep record. If after a year shop operators still not following rules, then you can take them to task. Now, if in a year, you get $1.86 billion, $1.8 billion with the bags, but if you waive that, still I think it's worth it. Now on transport, T4 trunk road, the $7 billion proposal is an enhanced proposal. With inflation, I think the cost is still acceptable. For the Tai Po to Sha Tin section, the government could make public the VC ratio during peak hours. It's not 0.99 in 2023, it's 1.2 in 2047. If the government makes this design, I will support the project. And for after the Shatin Central Link cut rebar scandal, I have asked for a separate department on railways, because the highways department now has to take care of all major transport infrastructure projects. Now you're going to set up the railways department soon, and there will be additional staff, and you just need a D6 director, red staff, and his deputy. That costs maybe $10 million more in salary, because now the director of highways has too onerous a workload. Now we've asked for the 5th cross-harbour crossing to address the congestion in the Twin Moon line. Now, the government just announced that the Khao Yi Chau Artificial Islands project may be pushed back to a few years. And then we're going to see additional population in Northwest New Territories to the tune of 500,000. So we need a 5th harbour crossing. So without the artificial islands, actually, there may not be the 5th harbour crossing. So in future, there will be 1.5 million people moving to the territories. How are they going to come to work? So definitely, that means you need to proceed with the artificial islands project. Now on recycling of kitchen waste. In 2022, there's about 11,000 tons of municipal solid waste. 30% of that is kitchen waste. And then from 2020 to 2022, kitchen waste recycling is only 4 to 5%. The government is now installing the smart kitchen waste recycling bin in public housing estate. I'm a bit worried to hear it's smart. But then there's complaint there are not enough of them. And then recently we've heard reports about the bins breaking down, or there are people just putting bags of kitchen waste next to the bin, and there's a rodent problem and so on. And then at the Special Finance Committee meetings, members asked whether there is a target for kitchen waste recycling. Well, the answer is the government cannot answer the question. Now I see that in a market there large-scale kitchen waste recycling bin. Each month the rent is about $20,000, and 100 tons of kitchen waste could be taken care of, and then some and they will be turned into 10 to 15 kilograms of powder. That means kitchen waste volume is substantially reduced, and then the kitchen waste can be used for compost, and that machine doesn't cost much if it's bought on a large scale. Can you consider immediate composting of kitchen waste instead of collecting kitchen waste and then sending it to kitchen waste center because it gives out smell and everybody complains along the way? Now, after school care. Parents ask me how come in primary school there's a pilot scheme but there's not one for kindergartens, because it's also necessary. Why can't there be pilot scheme for both kindergartens and primary schools? So we asked the government, with the pilot scheme, how much does it cost for each place? On average, it's $2,700. It's not much. So why is it that we cannot also do a pilot scheme with kindergartens? Because kindergartens have as much demand as primary schools. Now, smart city. I think, with the district council election, Hong Kong Ito, Invigilator, and so on, everybody say they are far too smart, that we see failures, and then we don't know who to pursue. For the Archdio says that's not involved, and then recently we asked Professor Sun Dong, and he said that he would upgrade the Archdio, and there's going to be a digital policy office. So there will be support in future. That means for the problems that we see now, it has nothing to do with him. In future, there will be more supervision. So he's taking up that responsibility. Well, I think you should support whatever he asks you for. Give him whatever he asks you for, and then we could sort out this issue as soon as possible. Now, talking about where spending should be cut, there's to be an extra $200 million for linking the Kowloon, the central link to Kowloon Town. But what for? If the project goes to finance committee, I'm not going to support it. And then last week, that is the Grade A luxury office of former chief executive in Admiralty. Rent is $2.67 million with other expenditure. It costs some $10 million a year. Well, it's not a large sum, but it depends on whether this is sustainable. And what if there's increase in rent? Are you going to allow that? Now, for the last CE, announced that she wouldn't run for election in April 2022, and then the office was rented in June, and operation started in July. So is it for each former CE to decide where to rent an office? I think that will be a real problem. That's why I would suggest government to identify suitable location. If the GBA has premises, that's the best. If not, let's go for the less expensive offices that are still presentable enough. For example, in Wan Chai North, you can buy a whole floor for about 10,000 square feet, and that could accommodate 5 former CEs. And then each CE will not have to decide where to keep an office after retirement, because it will be, it's better that way, and then there won't be any controversy. Finally, I would like to stress again, I do support the budget. I've just put forward some suggestions for making minor improvements. I hope the FS will consider it. Thank you.
主席。
Mr. Tang Fei, President, I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill 2024. I'll focus on 2 areas: education and geopolitical tension. The FS announced the budget this year, and it looks like there are not many new measures for education. Well, there isn't a separate item for education, in fact. With the decline of school-age students population, the expenditure on education will be 14.9% of the total expenditure, and the amount is about $2.3 billion. I mentioned to the FS that we need to stabilize the amount of funding we allocate to education. Even with a decline of student population, we should not cut back on spending on education. So I'm glad to see that the FS did not do so. While there aren't many new education schemes or items, for instance, we are seeing injection of funding for, say, Hong Kong PhD Fellowship Scheme, and we're also seeing injection of funding for GBA tours for students. These are all spending that is worthwhile, as they offer exchange opportunities for secondary school students. On youth development, the budget proposes providing more overseas and mainland internship opportunities for young people. The KPI is that not less than 30,000 young people should benefit from these schemes. I think that visits or exchanges are effective. Students should first visit the mainland and also Belt and Road countries. Also, $680 million are going to be injected to the VPAT scheme, including the pilot incentive scheme to employers. Employers will be the ones assessing the performance of students, and this would be very helpful. I suggest that the FS should include self-financing institutions into this pilot incentive scheme. $100 million are going to be earmarked to set up the Alliance of Applied Science Universities. Can we have local self-financing institutions to join the alliance so that they can help contribute to the educational sector? Also, there will be $134 million reserved for Know More About IT scheme, with each school getting $300,000. In the past, the funding was only given to schools, and the funding could not be used to recruit people. But if that's the case, it will only increase the workload for teachers. Well, AI and education have to go hand in hand nowadays. In Singapore, AI education is becoming more and more popular nowadays. We have to popularize AI education. We have to do it through allocation of funding and through the launch of relevant policies. We should definitely introduce AI or relevant KPIs in order to incorporate AI into our education system and to assess whether AI is effective in educating our students. So these are my comments on education. We've been talking about geopolitics. Well, my view is that economic problems that arise because of geopolitical tension, we have to adopt the mindset of geopolitics to look at them. We should not simply adopt counter-cyclical measures. Political issues can only be dealt with through political means. For instance, Western media or Western official organizations have been staging smearing campaigns on the national security law in Hong Kong. They have been imposing sanctions on our people. And people who might be interested in coming to Hong Kong, they are being put off. So this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for the Legislative Council. Apart from rebutting these claims, I think we have to stress the importance of protecting national security and protecting overseas investment. With national security law, so whether the capital is from the West or from the mainland, we can offer better protection to the capital because we have a better investment environment with the national security law. And because we are enhancing our rule of law system, we can again offer better protection to investment capital. Switzerland, since 2018, the financial crisis, it's been getting pressure from the U.S. In the end, in 2013, Switzerland had to sign an agreement with the U.S. and that Switzerland had to disclose any U.S.-related information from the bank accounts to the U.S. government. And now Switzerland is no longer the tax evasion haven. And in 2023, we're seeing the crisis faced by the banking system. And 2014, or rather in 2024, because of the Russia-Ukrainian war, a lot of the assets risked being confiscated by the government. And all this have to do with the flow of capital, and this is dealing a huge blow to the capital market. For international investors, especially those with huge assets, that is what we know as family offices, they care whether their wealth and assets can be kept confidential and whether their assets can be passed on to the next generation in a stable manner. So the government should, from this perspective, promote to global investors and promise them that with our national security system, global investors who come to Hong Kong will get better protection in terms of their equity capital. I would like to give an example. It might not be the most appropriate. Since last October, Israel has been facing wars, and all kinds of mainstream media, including Chinese media, have been criticizing Israel. According to Startup Nation Central's report, Israel, in terms of acquisition and setting up of INT funds since October is still seeing a significant growth. That means geopolitical tension is not really causing an impact on or negative impact on the economic growth of Israel. Well, Hong Kong is not facing such a huge geopolitical factor compared to Israel. Well, in response to Mr. Adrian Ho's question, the SAR government mentioned that we have 200 family offices that have plans to establish their foothold in Hong Kong. According to Taiwan's TWC's report as at 2023, there are about 7,500 family offices around the world. According to Deakins, we will have maybe 3,000, according to Deloitte, we may have 3,000 family offices in Hong Kong. We cannot just look at the number of family offices in Hong Kong. We have to look at the amount they invest in Hong Kong and the amount of wealth they bring to Hong Kong and the multiply effects they bring to us. However, I think the SAR government should continue to work on boosting the number of family offices in Hong Kong. We're going to see lots of presidential elections around the world this year. I hope the government should work harder. We should continue to have confidence with our country. We should tread carefully, and we will see hope. Thank you. Mr. Michael Luke. President, I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill and the budget. With the external environment and geopolitical tension and the sanctions imposed by the West on Hong Kong, we have to stabilize our economy as well as improve our livelihood. We have to break ground. With 5 years of fiscal deficit, which reaches $48.1 billion, well, I think this is a problem that we have to face, but at the same time, we should not embellish the risk we are facing. Some people describe this budget as one that scraps harsh measures. Well, in terms of harsh measures, we are talking about the demand-side management measures for residential properties. Well, whether the lifting of such cooling measures will have a positive impact on Hong Kong, well, we'll have to adopt a wait-and-see approach. Will that lower the number of transactions in the market? Well, I believe families in Hong Kong, they would like to see a drop in home prices rather than an increase. In terms of other sweeteners, well, some are wondering if the FSR is scaling back on the relief measures. Well, in terms of welfare, education, housing, and so on, well, there's a drop in terms of the allocation of resources to these areas. Well, we are actually seeing a sustainable increase for instance, SSA, compared to the previous term government, the expenditure is $58.9 billion. We're seeing an increase of 56%. For the $2 transport subsidy scheme for elderly people, the expenditure is $7 billion, which is an increase of 42%, 425% compared to the previous term government. Expenditure on hospital authority also reaches $95.4 billion, which is an increase of 47%. For working family allowance, the expenditure reaches $29.7 billion, which represents an increase of 96% compared to the previous term government. So I'd like to thank the government for caring the underprivileged. We are trying to narrow the Gini index Currently, it stands at 0.397. I think it is an acceptable level. If the Gini coefficient is high, then we are seeing a risk. You have to give people peace of mind, and that would encourage people to work hard and contribute to our society. Some people are of the view that with the fiscal deficit, expenditure on housing may spoil lazy people or spoil young people who want to lie flat. Well, my view is that compared to countries with a high tax regime, well, we're actually doing quite well. For 2-person or 3-person households, their income or monthly income are about 19,000 to 30,900. Well, these people, they would just like to have a home, and so they meet the threshold to apply for public rental housing. They want to be able to pass the relevant asset and income test in order to be allocated with a public rental housing unit. So when the bosses tell them that they can enjoy a pay rise, they may refuse it. And they may have just one person, for instance, working and the other staying at home in order to pass the test. We should not stigmatize them and label them as someone who's lazy. Well, we are actually facing a problem of insufficient supply of public rental housing. We should boost the supply of public housing. We should reduce the waiting time for PRH units. Well, within 2 to 3 years' time, the government is not going to be able to achieve that. So there is a cash allowance trial scheme for people waiting for PRH. So for people who aren't allocated a PRH unit, they get the cash allowance for renting an apartment, for instance. And this is helpful. People are easily satisfied, so these people should not be stigmatized. Instead, the government should think about how to boost housing supply. Well, when there is a higher supply of public housing, then for people who earn high income, they may be asked to pay a higher rent. On the other hand, we should prevent abuse of our social welfare system. We should not reduce welfare across the board. For instance, for the $2 public transport subsidy scheme, it encourages elderly people to go out and visit their friends or even go to work. And this helps improve their health, and it will also in turn lower our spending on healthcare. What if there are young people who abuse the system by using an elderly octopus card to take public transport? Well, the penalty system is not deterrent enough. The fine is only $2,000. And for MTRC, they only ask for a fine of a few $100s for people who breach the scheme. On housing as well, there should be mechanism in place to prevent abuse. Turning on capital works expenditure, every year it exceeds $100 billion. there is a subcommittee set up to review capital works expenditure in the Legislative Council. Hopefully, the subcommittee can start working this year. We need to put our heads together to think about how we can minimize capital works expenditure. There are capital works that help improve people's livelihood. For instance, the T4 Trunk Road project costs some $7 billion, but should we simply scrap the project? We have to see whether the government manages to compress cost from tendering exercise or other parts of the project. We should also think about how we can make use of the mainland healthcare system to support people in Hong Kong. All these can help cut back on expenditure. Finally, I want to say that young people are not lying flat. The problem is, do we have or do we offer enough opportunities for young people to move up the social ladder? Young people should make use of new productive forces, but at the same time, they should achieve a work-life balance. We should offer labor protection to them so that young people would think that they won't lose their personal life by simply working hard. This will motivate them to move towards the right direction and work hard. And this would also help boost our INT sector. I think INT will be our future. We will have to make use of different types of technologies. Well, some members mentioned about supercomputing. Well, energy is an important driving force for supercomputing technology. We should have resources to study how we can introduce clean energy in Hong Kong so that people won't have to pay so much for electricity. Thank you.
Ms. Nixie Lam. The wise will adapt to changing times. President Xi Jinping said this. Director Xia Baolong also said something similar. What does Hong Kong bring to mind? Food paradise, international financial center. This morning, a group of SME people came to us. They described a street of empty storefronts. These people did not give up. They gave us suggestions on how Hong Kong can achieve transformation, surface quality, revitalizing conventions and exhibitions, getting exhibitors to stay longer. We got ideas on those points. What mattered above all was that the government has to take the lead so that we can all get started. Hong Kong is performing fairly well in many areas. But that means we need to think it through. How do we achieve our economic transformation so that we can develop new productive forces? How can we keep up with our country's development and the changing times? The Financial Secretary is attracting businesses to Hong Kong. There are measures to attract talent as well. I also welcome one-stop services at Hong Kong Talent Engage to help incoming talent to put down roots. In May, there will be a global summit on talent and also a summit on new productive forces. We will promote to the mainland cities and the overseas our edge with talent. This year is a special time. Our country has established ties with France, and this is the 60th anniversary. Given all those special events to mark the occasion, we need to promote our edge. We need to set up platforms for our businesses and young people so that they can all join in. Let's create new impetus for our economy. In May, I will visit Kuala Lumpur to join a forum marking the 50th anniversary of the diplomatic ties between Malaysia and China. This will be a youth forum to foster exchanges between China and Malaysia. This can also help cement our role as the eight centers. We're not just a financial center, we're also the East meets West Center for cultural exchange. We will look at what young people and businesses can do to foster exchange. In the community where arts and culture are concerned, there's much we can do to foster interaction. The government needs to offer policy support for the exchanges among young people and businesses. Let's get rid of barriers, and then we can get an edge in drawing talent. We need outside talent. Let's also focus on nurturing local talent. Young people struggle with finding a platform where they can shine. They need somewhere they can unleash their potential. Next year, there will be a youth development summit involving young people from different places, and we can have our young people join the occasion and they can share their ideas and compare notes. This way, this is a unique opportunity. I give the government a thumbs up for setting up this platform. For our young people, we need to nurture them to make sure young people can apply what they have learned. They are learning what the market needs. That way, young people don't have to spend extra money on learning something else. Emerging areas such as art finance, ESG, conservation, these areas are high value adding. We need to train up such talent. So for that, let's make plans on Hong Kong's future development. We need people. I've been driving pronatalist policies. I've been calling on the government to roll out such policies. I've been asking the government to help to make it easier for people to have children. There's a $20,000 newborn baby bonus. Starting from this year of assessment, if you live with your newborn child, you get tax deductions. And that deduction goes up from $100,000 to $120,000. Under personal assessment and incentive tax, there is tax break for in vitro fertilization as well. The tax allowance is up to $100,000. I talked to my friends about this, but few are aware of such schemes. So given these great policies, the government should step up publicity. And I also hope that women can also freeze their eggs up to 30 years, up from 10 years. Let's not try to pressurize our young women to have children while they are young. It will take time. Let's let young women freeze their eggs. That will give them greater flexibility in life. And this is under the Human Reproduction Council. But this council does not hold regular meetings. I asked the government a question. How often does the council hold a meeting? No answer. I got the impression is that this council is dormant. So should we get rid of the inactive elements and only keep the active elements? On childbirth, we cannot let ourselves rank last in the world. The government, we have been told that people had to fill out forms all the time, and so much paperwork going on. But there are no measures to help the sector. This also shows there's only regulation without improvement. Then there's over-regulation. Filling out forms seems to be the only concern for departments. There are many factors holding back people back from having children. For families already with children, there will be more service places for childcare. There are also more places for after-school childcare, greater support for working families. I support these policies. So here's a suggestion. Let's team up with businesses. Let's get more businesses to become family-friendly employers. If they have the space, offer childcare. If they have no space, let the working parents work flexible hours. We talked about paternity leave. The government took the lead. Can we have child care leave as well? The budget set aside resources on many areas. There are great measures. Let's implement those measures. The departments responsible should bear in mind that they need to monitor the delivery. Throwing that money at the measure alone is not good enough. I so submit. Mr. Adrian Ho. Geopolitical tensions, a volatile and complex external environment with so many certainties, those are the challenges for Hong Kong in the recent years. Our post-COVID recovery is slower than expected. In 2023 to 24, land sale brought in only $15.6 billion, down 78% from the year before. That's not good enough. Let's look at our cargo container port. Our throughput fell out of the world's top 10 for the first time. People are worried about our future. The government must take the lead in boosting the economy and pursuing development. The FS proposed the green bond schemes and the infrastructure bond schemes. These two schemes will gradually replace the government bond scheme. The borrowing ceiling will go up to $500 billion. For the next 5 years, each year we will see $95 to $130 billion of bonds. The key lies not in our debt to GDP ratio, whether we can keep that ratio below the other advanced economies. We need to look past those data. It will take specific strategies and plans for the future. More than $100 billion in deficit. We want to get to a deficit of less than $50 billion in 2024 to 25. We want to break even in the next few years so that gradually we can reach a surplus in 2028 to 29. We want to get there. So our bond issuance should aim at strengthening, investing in the future. That way we can reap greater benefits in the future. That reminds me of what Director Xia Baolong said at the National Security Education Day. Director Xia said, "Our conventional edge is not static. Our golden brand name does not mean we can rest on our laurels. We cannot look at the new situation with old perspectives. We cannot solve new problems with old thinking." His words are profound. He reminded our government and our entire community to plan for the future. On fundraising and financing, the government should adapt to new situations and rise to new challenges, show new commitment. The government should be proactive in its approach. This will require new perspectives and new thinking. We need to plan about the policies, industries that will benefit our future. The government should seize this opportunity. Let's plan our expenditure and make us competitive. On tourism, let's work on publicity. Let's draw visitors from other places by creating new attractions. Let's also use idle government premises and the community isolation facilities. Those CIFs are prime resources. Let's turn them into housing projects. Let's also speed up the vetting processes for mega events. We can also use those sites for other short-term purposes. Let's make plans with foresight for municipal solid waste charging, which will entail huge changes. We need to be cautious with those schemes. On project costs, let's revisit our priorities to make sure we can contain the costs and keep those projects at a sustainable level. We have the Northern Metropolis and the Kaoyichao project. The Committee on Financing for Mega Development Project should look at our means and come up with appropriate plans and then come up with the most cost-effective strategy. Last year, I moved a motion on maximizing on the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. I welcome a point made in the budget, and that is making good use of the opportunities from the bridge and turn and develop an airport city so that we can cement our status as an aviation hub, so that we can realize this vision. Finally, the budget proposes that we will start charging the hotel accommodation tax. In 2008, to further foster the tourism sector, the government waived that tax 16 years later. The government will put $1 billion into the work of the HKTB and Hong Kong Tourism Commission for events to promote our tourism sector. The sector is trying to get visitors to stay longer. Many Hong Kong people head north to spend their money. Our sector is trying to think about how to keep people here, but the government is trying to bring back the HAT. I'm puzzled. Why the HAT now? This runs counter to the government's goal. If there are reasons that the community is not aware of for this HAT, I hope the government can first talk to the stakeholders and explain the reasons. The earlier the engagement starts, the better. That way, people won't have so many questions about the measure. I hope there will be more government measures to bring in visitors during slow seasons, and also get more Hong Kong people to stay here to spend their money. That way we keep our purchasing power here at Seoul Summit.
Mr. Robert Lee, thank you, President. I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill 2024. I thank the government for their support to the financial sector and SMCEs. And then there's also concession on rates and salaries tax. This is to prop up the economy and help give some relief to the public. There are various support measures for the financial sector, such as the Connect scheme, Wealth Management Connect, and many of my proposals have been taken on board. For example, for developing the securities and bonds market, expanding the green bond program, and so on. In the past year, the sector still faces various challenges. And we need to work on three major areas. First, we need to continue with the reform, open up more new markets, and promote a diversified development. This will help us to overcome the challenges, and then Hong Kong will be a better international financial center. On continuous reform, in written replies at the Special Finance Committee, there are statistics showing the time taken for IPOs to be listed. Especially for SMEs, there's a longer vetting time for listing, and there's been no improvement. Seems that the policy favors larger enterprises. Now, of course, we want to bring the best and the biggest enterprises to Hong Kong for listing, but at the same time, we should not overlook SMEs with good potential. For the large corporations that could help to boost liquidity in the market, and in many markets around the world, a transaction is concentrated in a handful of large corporations. I appreciate that. But still, the government should enhance the existing regulatory regime. It should review its front-loaded regulatory approach and the disclosure-based approach. The Hong Kong Exchange must also support different industries and companies' different scales to come list in Hong Kong or raise borrowings. Now, the China Securities Commission has just announced 5 measures for that will bring benefits to Hong Kong. Now, reform is never easy, but we want to bring more businesses to Hong Kong to be listed. There should be active reform. We need to enhance the competitiveness of Hong Kong stocks. As for other details, you could refer to my proposals previously on 10 measures to boost, to stimulate stock trading. Now, for the 5 measures, and one of the measures in the budget is about removing all the property cooling measures that help to stimulate property transactions in the market. And for the stock transaction stamp duty has been restored to the 0.1% level. Then it seems that that measure is not bringing about much impact. Now, we're still in a difficult time, and there is a low trading volume in the stock market. Perhaps the government could further lower the transaction stamp duty, maybe just by charging 0.1% of either the seller or the buyer, and not both. Now, as I mentioned, I proposed 10 measures to stimulate stock trading. The government could also use its resources to go into the market. I know for the Forex fund, it's meant to keep our Forex exchange rate stable. But some in the market believe the government should consider using other resources outside of the Forex fund. For example, the Hong Kong Investment Corporation could take the lead to invest in the local stock market and boost confidence in the market. Now, the government is also actively promoting mega events, is doing much publicity in the budget. There's also mention of ETF that track Saudi Arabia stocks, and so the government's now working on an ETF that tracks Middle Eastern stocks. Now, there's also going to be multi-currency issuance of bonds, and then we're going to offer more offshore renminbi products to the Middle Eastern market that will strengthen Hong Kong's status as an RMB hub, offshore RMB hub. The government is also going to set aside $100 billion for promoting sustainable development of the financial industry. There are various existing support schemes now, so the fund will be used for that purpose. The government could be more innovative. Apart from supporting existing schemes, the funds could also be used for supporting SMEs to open up the Asian and Middle Eastern markets. On promoting diversified development, the government is promoting retail of bonds. Now that's the green retail bond, another bond issued that provides opportunities to the market. For many conventional financial businesses, they failed to transform, so they left the market. But still, we are seeing steady growth in the number of financial businesses. So that means we are transforming to wealth and asset management. And that's another scheme to extend the grant scheme for open-ended fund companies and REITs for 3 years, and that's a commendable move. And then there are other new products and so on. There should also be a regulatory regime for issuers of stable coins and so on. Let's hope that the licensing regime should be quick and easy. The threshold should not be too high. We need to strike the right balance. On the economy and environmental protection, there are views from the business sector. The government on local business chambers and associations, if they take part in overseas exhibitions and conferences, the government should give them more resources. And therefore, the SME financing scheme, it should become a regular scheme. This will help SMEs to address their financing needs. And there should be targeted poverty alleviation. The government should target active acts that abuse public resources. Now, the government wants to encourage wider use of electric vehicles. There's first registration tax concession scheme that's to be extended for another 2 years. So we want to promote the development of EV market. That more models and brands should be introduced in Hong Kong, including mainland brands, because they will meet different needs of motorists. So I speak in support of the Appropriation Bill 2024. I now suspend the meeting. It will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m.